Everybody, it's October 21st, 2022, and I'm trying to squeeze this in. So, apologies if I haven't been on here that much. I have a paper that's due at the end of next week, and it's like a really big paper. So, I found this, I put this up. I'm going to put this, okay, here's what I'm going to do for you. If you want to watch Emerson talk for 54 minutes about the contract's July '05 question, that would be great for you because it would really help. This guy is a genius. Now, what I have here is the actual bar from 2005. I happened to get my hands on a practice exam. So, I can read it off to you and I can show you the model answers. Okay, so these were done at the California Bar 2005. And this is a common law contracts question. And this is a model answer from them. So the California picked these as good answers. Now this is answer B. So let's do this. I will go ahead and read this again. I will post the playlist under. I will edit this and post the playlist underneath. Okay. And then I will put. Wait, do I have this? Okay, hold on a second. Let me grab this. So okay, so this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then right here is where this falls. It falls in hour 2, day 2. See 2, that's the day 2, hour 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. Okay, and we'll read this off. And then you can listen to what he has to say because he's probably just the perfect, he's so smart. So, okay, here is the 2005 Emerson video. Whoops. Now, this is the entire contracts playlist, and what I really like is he's got playlists that detail everything. There's also a 2007 complete California Bar playlist in this website. On this, I just downloaded them and then re-upload them. Okay, so this is the contracts lectures playlist, and I don't have a lot of time, so I'm sorry. Alright, normally I prepare better, but where's this PDF? Alright, let's read the PDF. Alright. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to read you at least one model answer, okay? Question 5 from 2005. And then you can watch what he says, okay? Because he's going to be more accurate than the actual students were, or the JDs. This is from a California people that already have a JD. So, okay, Stan and Barb entered into a valid written contract whereby Stan agreed to convey to Barb 100 acres of agricultural land and water rights in an adjacent stream. Barb agreed to pay Stan $100,000. When Stan and Barb were negotiating the deal, Stan said, I want to make sure that this property will still be used for farming and not developed. Barb simply replied, well, I can certainly understand your feelings. In fact, Barb intended to develop the land as a resort. The conveyance was to take place on June 1st. On May 15th, Stan called Barb and told her the deal was off. Stan said that a third party, Tom, had offered him $130,000 for the land. Stan also said that he discovered that Barb intended to develop the land. On May 16th, Barb discovered that Stan has title to over 90 of the 100 acres specified, and that he does not have water rights in the adjacent stream. Barb still wishes to purchase the property. However, it will cost her $15,000 to purchase the water rights from the true owners of those rights. I'm a Virginia real estate agent, and in Virginia, any of the navigable waters are basically not considered private. But I guess California's different. Okay, so the water rights from the true owners of those rights. What equitable and contractual remedies? It must be a small stream, maybe that's it. The equitable and contractual remedies, if any, may Barb seek? What defenses, if any, may Stan assert? And what is the likely outcome on each? Discuss. Okay, question Barb versus Stan. Barb's equitable and contractual remedies. Contractual rights, land sale contract. Barb can sue Stan under contract rights for breach of land sale contract, failing to deliver marketable title for the breach of a general warranty deed. She should assert that she's entitled to the remedy of specific performance or alternatively damages under contract. Specific performance. Why is this doing this? Specific performance is an equitable remedy that is available when 1. There is a valid contract. 2. The terms of the contract are clear and definite and were performed. There is sick, inadequate legal damages. There is sick mutuality. And there are no valid defenses. Okay, so the sick, whenever they do that, they're saying they know that this is grammatically incorrect. Or, okay, or maybe there's a misspelling error. I'm not really. Okay, a valid contract. A valid contract in a land sale agreement requires a writing with all essential terms. The contract between Barb and Stan was a valid written agreement for the sale and purchase of 100 acres of agricultural land and water rights to a stream. To close on June 1st, Barb agreed to pay $100,000 for the purchase of the land. Clear and definite terms. Terms are clear and definite when a court is able to enforce the terms. For a land sale contract, the contract must contain parties, property defined, time for performance, and purchase price. Here the court can enforce the sale of land since it defines the parties are Barb and Stan. The land is sold is 100 acres of agricultural land and water rights to a stream to close on June 1st. Barb agreed to pay $100,000 to purchase the land. She's repeating herself. Clear and definite terms, or he. Terms are clear and definite when a court is able to enforce the terms. Wait a minute, did we just read this, or is this a repeat? Alright, I think we just read that. Yeah, I'm sorry guys. This is not scrolling that well. Inadequate legal damages. Legal damages are inadequate when there is a contract for a subject matter that is unique. Land has been held as unique subject matter since no two lots of land are the same, even if they appear to be. Since the contract between Barb and Stan is for 100 acres of land, the contract is unique subject matter and legal damages are inadequate. Therefore, this element is met. Mutuality. At common law, mutuality required that both parties be entitled to specific performance. However, modernly, Mutuality only requires that the person seeking the specific performance be ready and able to perform. Here, as long as Barb, the person seeking the specific performance of the contract, is able to pay the purchase price, she should be entitled to specific performance, abatement of the purchase price. In a land sale contract, a purchase price can be abated or reduced when the title rendered is defective due to an encumbrance or unmarketable title or a conveyance of less than promised. If Barb succeeds on specific performance subject to Stan's defenses discussed below, then she should be entitled to abate the purchase price. Bob contracted for 100 acres of land and water rights in an adjacent stream. Barb later discovered that Stan only owned 90 acres and did not own the water rights he claimed to own. Since Barb contracted to pay $100,000, she should be entitled to a reduction of the purchase price to reflect the value of the land minus the 10 acres and the stream. Stream. The stream was not owned by Stan, but owned by another person who was willing to sell the stream to Barb for $15,000. Therefore, the purchase price should first be reduced by the amount to a total of $85,000. This is fair since it would cost Barb that amount to correct the contract as agreed. 10 acres. Stan agreed to sell Barb 10 acres, but only owned 90 acres of the land. The 10 acres of the land should be subtracted from the remaining $85,000. One method of doing this would be to divide $85,000 by 100 and value each acre at $850. Then multiply 850 by 10 acres for a reduction of $8,500 credited to Barb. Legal damages. If Barb is successful in her attempt to obtain specific performance, she should sue Stan for breach of contract and obtain legal damages, breach of contract, anticipatory repudiation. Anticipatory repudiation is a clear and unambiguous statement that a party will not perform before performance comes due under the contract. Since Stan called off the sale of the land on May 15th, which was 2 weeks before the closing date of June 1st, Stan anticipatorily repudiated the contract, which is a major breach. This entitles Barb to suspend her performance and sue for breach of contract. Expectancy damages. A major breach entitles the aggrieved party to damages to make them whole. These are called expectancy damages. In these contracts, the appropriate measure of damages is the fair market value of the land, the contract price. Here, Barb contracted for the sale of land for $100,000. Stan was later offered $130,000 for the land by a third party. If indeed this contract reflects fair market value, and the contract was also for 100 acres and the water rights, then Barb should be granted $30,000. Otherwise, Barb should get $30,000 plus $15,000 for the water rights, plus $8,500 to reflect the additional 10 acres. Stan's defenses. Stan should assert that Barb is not entitled to an equitable remedy and that specific performance was inappropriate since there was not a valid contract which Barb had performed. Laches. Laches bars equitable remedies when a party unreasonably delays and this causes prejudice. Here, there's no indication that Barb delayed in filing her suit. Therefore, this defense will fail. Unclean hands. Under the clean hands doctrine, equity will not come to the aid of a person with unclean hands. The clean hands doctrine bars equitable relief to a person who engages in wrongful, fraudulent, or unconscionable conduct with regard to the subject matter at hand. Here Stan could argue that Barb knew of Stan's firm desire to keep the land. as agricultural land to be used for farming and prevent its development. In fact, Barb said, "I can certainly understand your feelings, but in reality had intended all along to develop the agricultural land as a resort." Barb did not disclose this information to Stan, which is a material omission, and one that probably would have terminated the contract. On the other hand, Stan did not include the statement in the contract, and if it were truly a deal breaker, he probably should have, since courts tend to favor the free alienation of property and prefer that material agreements be in the writing. If there is one, the court will side with Barb unless they can find that she committed fraud against Stan. Therefore, this defense, although a close call, will not likely bar Barb's relief in equity. Contract invalid. Stan can also claim that the contract is invalid, which would refute one of the elements necessary to enforce an agreement with specific performance. Unconscionability. Stan should argue that the contract was unconscionable, since there was an unfair surprise in Barb's attempt to develop the land. However, the argument will fail, as Barb and Stan appeared to be at arm's length, and Stan should have included his restriction on the land. Terms of the contract not met. Stan can also argue that the contract terms were not met, and Barb breached the contract by having the intent to develop the land. Although there was a condition, Barb used the land with the restriction on the land for agricultural purposes. However, the Parol evidence rule will bar this argument. Parol evidence bars introduction of oral and written agreements make sick before or contemporaneously with a completely integrated writing. Therefore, Barb will argue that oral statements by Stan that he preferred the property to be used for farming and not be developed is barred. Now, you know there's 7 exceptions to the Parol evidence rule, right? Okay, just throwing that out there. Stan's bad faith, unclean hands. Since Stan also acted in bad faith and with unclean hands by accepting an offer from another purchaser for more money, he will probably lose on his defense arguments. Okay, now let's look at answer B, because you know what? Opinions are varied. Barb versus seller. Breach of the land sale contract. Valid enforceable contract. The facts tell us that B and S entered into a valid contract for the sale of 100 acres of agricultural land and water rights in exchange for $100K. Anticipatory repudiation. B will argue that S breached the agreement when he anticipatorily repudiated the agreement on May 15th. In order to have an anticipatory repudiation, the breaching party must unequivocally indicate an intent not to perform. In this case, S called B and told her the deal was off. This qualifies as an unequivocal repudiation, and S, Stan's seller, would be free to pursue all remedies available to her for the breach. I think they mean B. Okay, so that's well, sometimes stuff gets mixed up. Stan is the seller, right? Oh wait, Barb is the buyer. Excuse me, Stan. Okay. Why would seller or Stan be free to pursue remedies available to her for breach? Okay, well anyway, that's okay. This is a passing answer, and it's one of the better ones. B has 4 options available to her after S's repudiation. She is free to 1. Treat the contract as repudiated and sue for damages. 2. Treat the contract as discharged and await for the time of performance, June 1st, and sue when performance does not occur. Now, I just want to interject this here for a minute. These answers are not perfect. They are close enough, And they are the better answers that they use for the model answers, just to let you know. Okay, and sue when performance does not occur. 4. Urge S to perform. In this case, we know B still wishes to purchase the property, thus her best option is to treat the contract as repudiated and sue immediately for all the contractual remedies available to her. Unmarketable title. B will also argue that S breached the land sale contract by being unable to provide a marketable title. This is because she discovered on May 16th that S had only title of 90 of the 100 acres he was purporting to sell B, and because he did not have any water rights in the adjacent stream. Although S may try to argue that his inability to provide marketable title discharges him from the contract, this will not be successful defense because only the buyer to a land sale contract has a right to terminate the contract. If the seller cannot provide marketable title, if the buyer still wants to purchase the property, the seller must perform under contract. In addition, the buyer has the right to sue for damages incurred under the contract. This could include abatement of the purchase price. This is true. I've heard about this as a real estate agent. If you have a bona fide contract and you are put your property up for sale, they can sue you if you try to back out. And people have done it. Okay, remedies. Compensatory damages. Okay, expectancy damages. In order to be awarded damages, B must prove that they are foreseeable and certain to result. The usual measure of damages in a contract action is for B's expectancy. That is, B is entitled to recover at the amount that she would need to purchase a replacement. In this case, it would be very difficult for B to establish how much it would cost her to purchase comparable property since she specifically wants S's properties. Thus, there does not appear to be any way to provide B with an amount that would allow her to buy an adequate substitute. If, however, there were other comparable nearby for sale, and if S could not obtain specific performance, then she might be able to prove expectancy damages by establishing how much it would cost to purchase that other property. If she could do that, she would be entitled to the difference between what it cost to purchase the replacement property and the contract price, $100K. Consequential damages. In addition to expectancy damages, consequential damages are sometimes available in contract actions. These are damages that are unusual, but that were foreseeable to both parties at the time the contract was formed. B will try to argue that S should be liable to her for any lost profits she will suffer as a result of the delay in developing the land for a resort. She will argue that the substantial delay that will occur because she has to either bring suit to obtain S's land or because she will have to go find an alternative property will result in a significant lost profit damages. Moreover, she will argue that S knew on May 15, before June 1st performance date, that she intended to develop the land as a resort, and that he thus should be liable for all the lost profits that she will incur as a result of a breach. So she lied to him, right? This is my interjection here. She lied to him, but then somebody came forward and told him that, hey, she lied. So then she's using the fact that she was told on in court to turn it around on him. S will successfully argue that B is not entitled to the consequential damages for two reasons. First, he will prove that he was not aware of B's plans at the time the contract was formed. The contract was formed at the time the parties signed the agreement, and at that time, S was under the impression B would be using the land for farming. This is evidenced by his statement that he wanted the property to remain undeveloped and to be used for farming, and B's response: well, I can certainly understand your feelings. S will argue This did not put him on any kind of notice as to B's intentions, and thus he isn't liable for her lost development profits. Second, okay, so that's not foreseeable, right? Second, S will successfully argue that the lost development profits can't be proven with certainty since it's a new business with no prior history of profits. Since the courts are loath to award lost profits to new businesses, S will also succeed in his argument. Accordingly, B is entitled to receive the amount it would take to allow her to purchase a new piece of replacement property. However, since the land is unique, this is inadequate compensation for B. B will not be able to prove that she was entitled to consequential damages, since they are certain, and since S was unaware of B's plans at the time the contract was formed. Incidental damages. B is always entitled to recover for incidental damages suffered as a result of a breach. In this case, to the extent that she can prove what it cost her to search for new property, she can recover from S. Restitutionary damages. Restitution is an alternative remedy to compensatory damages when the defendant received a benefit, and compensatory damages are not the best measure of damages. In this case, S not actually received any benefit yet. However, B may be able to succeed in her argument that if B is allowed to sell the property to Tom because the court refuses to grant specific performance, then she should be entitled to receive $30,000 S was receiving from Tom that was in excess of the amount S was entitled to receive under the contract with B. She can argue that allowing S to retain the additional sum would result in unjust enrichment. Specific performance. Specific performance is available only if B can establish, here it is, okay, that damages are inadequate, the terms of the contract are definite and certain, it is feasible to enforce the contract, there's mutuality of remedy performance, there are not equitable defenses, inadequacy. As discussed above, since land is unique, and since B can't prove her damages, with certainty, damages are inadequate remedy in this case, definite in certain terms. Courts do not award specific performance unless the terms are very definite and certain. Here B will argue the terms were quite certain, since she was entitled to receive 100 acres of land and water rights exchange for $100,000. She will succeed in her argument. Feasibility of enforcement. A court will not award specific performance unless it's feasible to enforce the injunction. Here a court presumably has jurisdiction over land and S. In addition, the court would be able to use its contempt power to force S to convey the land to B. Thus, the injunction is feasible to enforce. Mutuality of remedy performance. In the past, courts would not award specific performance if there was no mutuality of remedy. If the party asking for the specific performance could not be made to specifically perform in the event of her breach. Courts today have modified this requirement so that they grant specific performance if it is possible to ensure mutuality of performance. In this case, mutuality of performance is possible since the court can require us to convey the deed to the property at the same time B tenders $100,000 to S. No equitable defenses. Laches. B has not waited an unreasonable length of time to bring suit that S can argue that he detrimentally relied on B's failure to bring suit. Accordingly, this is no defense. Unclean hands. S will assert that B has acted with unclean hands with regard to his particular transaction. He will point to B's statement in response to his request that he would like the property to remain undeveloped. S will claim the statement, while not explicitly false, was deceptive since it induced S into believing that B would not develop the property when in fact B planned all along to develop it as a resort. S will argue it was a misstatement by omission, since B knew at the time the contract was formed that she would develop the property despite S's desire for her not to. Yet she did not volunteer this information to S. B may encounter that her evasion was not an actual false statement, and that she cannot be held responsible for whatever S may have interpreted her statement to mean, beyond its actual literal meaning. That she did, in fact, understand that he'd like the property to remain undeveloped. B will argue that since there was no actual false statement, she does not have unclean hands, and thus is fully entitled to specific performance. If S is successful in making his argument, the court will deny B's specific performance and award her damages only. Conclusion. The court will not award B specific performance of the contract since she had unclean hands with respect to the contract. Accordingly, it will grant her whatever damages can be proven would be certain to occur. In this case, B will likely be entitled to $30,000 that S will get from Tom that is in excess of the contract price they had agreed on. In addition, she can get and receive incidental damages, and is in the unlikely event that she can prove how much it would cost to obtain replacement property. She can receive any amount in excess of the contract price from S as well. If, however, the court did award specific performance, it would require S to convey the 90 acres of land S actually owns to B. B would only have to pay $90,000 for the 10 acres. In addition, since it would cost B $15,000 to purchase the water rights from the true owner, it is also entitled to deduct this from the purchase price. Accordingly, if a court does award B specific performance, it will only require B to tender $75,000 to S in exchange for S's 90 acres of property. S's defense contract was subject to a condition. S will argue in his defense that he did not actually breach the contract because the contract was subject to a condition, an agreement not to develop the land. He'll argue that the condition was not satisfied because he discovered that B fully intended to develop the land. Thus, he will argue he was discharged from his own duty to perform under the contract by B's failure to abide by the condition and was free to terminate the contract. B will successfully defend against this argument by proving that there was no explicit agreement to create a condition to the contract. The Parol evidence rule doesn't apply to extrinsic evidence used to demonstrate the existence of a condition precedent to the contract. B will introduce the statement S made. I want to make sure this property will still be used for farming and not developed. Next, she will introduce her response. Well, I certainly understand your feelings. Her response did not state that she would agree not to develop the property. Thus, there is no condition precedent, and B's argument that his duty to perform was discharged will not succeed. The end. All right, thank you for listening. I'm going to put these links below, and good luck if you are taking the exam on Tuesday for 1L. 1L does not have to know about real estate, so they won't have to know that real estate is unique. You can tell this is written by a person who's taken property law. I happen to have taken property law. You don't have to know all that. So let's say you got a similar question on the first year student's exam. This is really fact intensive. This is really, it's like a short paragraph, but there's a lot of bang for your buck in this for testing, right? Look at this. It's like, what equitable and contractual remedies, if any, may Barb seek, and what defenses, if any, may Stan assert? And what is the likely outcome on each? Discuss. So that's a real doozy. Well, thank you for listening again, and you can hear the opinion of a attorney here, and they're not all going to be exactly the same, but these two examples did pass the regular bar, and if you'll notice, and if you watch Emerson, he says you don't have to sit there and explain contract formation because the formation's already in the fact pattern. So you don't say offer acceptance and all that. You only break it apart when it's not so clear. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.